Hello, everyone. I'm James Common, Senior Naturalist with the Natural History Society, and I'm thrilled today to pick up a little series we started here on NHSN's YouTube channel, gosh, back in 2023, exploring the identification of a range of common plants you can find across the Northeast. As we're in the depths of winter currently, today I thought we'd look at something a bit topical, everyone's favourite, the snowdrop. Now, this is a great time of year to look at snowdrops. They're just starting to appear now here in Newcastle and may well be in your area too. But what you might not know is that there are more than one out there to be encountered in our region. Some are common, some are rather rare, but all are quite beautiful and are all worth a look at this time of year. Let's get started then. So, kicking us off, we have the snowdrop you're most likely to see just about anywhere in our region, the common snowdrop, Galanthus nivalis. This is easily the most abundant species in all habitats and the one you're most likely to see in great drifts through your local woodland or perhaps in a churchyard or large garden or public space. It will surely be familiar to most of you on account of its delicate white flowers, each sporting a lovely V-shaped green mark on the inner petals, visible in this picture. But with several snowdrops out there, how do you know you're looking at the common sort? Well, most of the time, if you think you have one, you do, but to be sure, look at the leaves. These should be glaucous, blue-green in colour, and narrow. In fact, they should be less than 6 millimeters wide, so feel free to grab a ruler and test this out for yourselves. Larger than this, you may have a hybrid, or you may have one of the other species we'll cover shortly. A final note on common snowdrops is that they don't vary all that much, with one notable exception. This rather funny flower you see here is Glanthus nivalis flor Um, and you'll see that it is different in having extra tepals in the flower head. In fact, its name, flor simply means double flowered, exactly what it is. These ones, despite being cultivated in origin, do occur in a wild state, particularly where gardenscapes are involved, and there are places where they're quite plentiful. But beyond the flowers, they are essentially the same as the common snowdrop shown previously. Now, this is where things begin to get interesting on account of some of the more unusual snowdrops out there. I mentioned that common snowdrop should always have leaves less than 6 millimeters across. But what if you find one greater than this, say 8 millimeters or above? Well, what you need to do next is look at the leaves themselves, both in terms of colour and any visible features, and particularly down at the leaf bases where the plant meets the soil. Doing this will let you easily separate the next two species, including this one, the pleated snowdrop. Now, the key thing with this one, aside from its obviously broad leaves, is the leaf base, which you can hopefully see here is flatly opposed, opposite. This contrasts with another species sporting wrapped leaf bases that we'll look at in a sec. Also of use here are the leaves themselves, which are greener in colour than the common snowdrop, but still a tad glaucous, and notably boast obvious pleats running parallel to the margins of the leaf. And here you have a better look at those pleats, and I hope you agree they stand out quite a bit. You'd certainly notice them if you stumbled across this plant in the field. With these broad leaves and leaf bases positioned opposingly, you can be fairly sure you have pleated snowdrop, or at least a hybrid thereof, though those are a little beyond the scope of this video. The next species worth looking at is a pretty burly one, the greater snowdrop, Galanthus elwesii. This is a pretty common plant in cultivation and does go on to establish itself at times, particularly in older plantings in churchyards and cemeteries. It also occurs as a discard from gardens and less often where soil or garden waste has been dumped in a natural setting. The first thing you'll notice here is that, again, this species has rather broad leaves. perhaps the broadest of any UK snowdrop, but they share the blue-green colour of the more delicate common snowdrop we looked at. So obviously it is something a little bit different to the norm, meaning that again, it's worth looking at those leaf bases, which in this case are clearly wrapped, clasping each other around the inner leaves and flower stalk, which contrast with those of the pleated snowdrop. Another shot of greater snowdrop here showing those big, broad, glaucous leaves. But something also worth mentioning here is that flowers can actually vary quite a bit. In some, such as these, you will note a fairly standard V-shaped green mark on the inner petals, while on others, including that in the first picture we looked at, you may have something that resembles the letter X. Regardless of this, these are the same plant, but should you find one showing a clear X-shaped mark, the process becomes even easier. When looking at snowdrops, it is important to note that not all species share the glaucous blue-green leaves of the common species. In some, the leaves can be bright grass green, as seen here. Should you encounter one of these, you find yourself looking at a different set of species entirely, the commonest of which is this one, the green snowdrop, Galanthus warrenobi. Do excuse my pronunciation here, I've never been one to handle Latin names well. Again, as well as the colour, you'll note that this is quite clearly a rather burly plant, contrasting significantly with the delicate, fine leaves of the common snowdrop. But if you do stumble across one of these green leaf snowdrops, the next thing you want to do is take a closer look at those inner petals. In this one, you should note a fairly typical V-shaped green marking reminiscent of those of the other species explored previously. Perhaps a little bit lighter in tone, but this is subjective. This is the key factor separating green snowdrop from another far scarcer species, which you're unlikely to encounter, but we'll cover nonetheless. And here we have it, the Ikariae snowdrop. Now, this one is fairly widespread in cultivation. We grow it in the garden, but it doesn't escape too often. You may, however, encounter it perhaps in churchyards or perhaps in areas that have been landscaped where bulbs have been left to spread at will. And you'll notice the leaves are fairly similar to the former species, perhaps a tad more shiny, but to clench it, you want to look at the flowers. And in this one, rather nicely, the green V-shaped marking has been replaced by one which is far more extensive. So much so that it is said by some to resemble boxer shorts. And hopefully you can see that in the picture here. And there we have it, a very brief whistle-stop tour of some of the snowdrops you could encounter while out and about there this season. I hope the shorter format of this video worked okay for you. It certainly made it easier to record. And I very much hope to do a few more of these on the NHSN YouTube channel in the very near future. But until then, a huge thank you for watching. See you later.